We're live. Good morning, world. Good afternoon, Northern Hemisphere, America, and
Hmm.
the middle of the night, I'm afraid, in Europe. And Tova's sound asleep in Israel. So uh, we've just got Dr. Maury Joseph and myself today. Now, Dr. Joseph is an Istdp psychologist, and I have an interest in bringing out the patterns that people need to, I suppose, aspire to become pain-free or to become aware of what's causing their pain. Now, um, Dr. Joseph wrote an article a number of years ago about barriers to mindfulness. Since then, he's actually expanded that and realized that sometimes these barriers could be doorways. So we're going to discuss this maybe, think
Hmm.
about it, and we're going to bring out this whole idea that moving away from constantly looking at our pain, constantly waiting for it to catastrophizing about it, we're going to look at what the alternatives are.
Mm.
Now, Dr. Joseph is a lecturer at where? I forget.
Oh, formerly a lecturer. I recently moved
Okay.
away from the DC area, so I no longer hold any of the teaching positions that I had that you listed there.
Oh, good. But he's
And I,
articulate.
yeah,
He's articulate in this area, and
yeah,
he's
sure.
more than willing. If you will write any comments or any questions on the Facebook page, he will follow them up for you as we talk.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Dr. Joseph, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you, I suppose, into this idea that the brain body, um, how would you put it? The brain and the body are one, as Bessel van der Kolk would call it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They're quite connected.
Well, they are, aren't they? At the neck.
Yeah.
That's also the barrier, isn't it?
What's that?
Hmm? Well, the
What's
neck's a
what's
bit
the
narrow,
barrier?
isn't it?
What's that? The barrier is.
Yeah, from the brain and the body. The neck.
um
Things get
what's
stuck at the neck, don't they?
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah.
People do. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So yeah, about myself, and how I got to this whole mind body thing. What's the short version? I guess the short version is I got lucky, and my first job out of college, I was working in an inpatient psychiatric hospital outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And there was two psychologists on staff there, and they were both trained in ISTDP, right? And so they were both very interested in the experience of feelings in the body, monitoring signals of anxiety, how anxiety was manifesting in the body. And I was very, I was naive to psychotherapy. I had undergraduate level psychology training, but I didn't really know how therapy worked. So this was, my first introduction to therapy was ISTDP, which, and so even before I applied to graduate school, I was like reading Davenlu and reading Patricia Coughlin and Diana Fosha and David Malin, and started reading Freud. And I was just, really into this stuff. And went to graduate school. And while I was in graduate school, I did ISTDP core training and did immersions with different teachers, got to see Davenlu present a couple times. And so that, the ISTDP training really is a helpful kind of indoctrination in understanding the linkages between the mind and the body. I was really lucky to train a lot with John Fredrickson, who is really literate and scholarly when it comes to.
We've had him on. We've had him on. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think I saw his episode. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And he, by the way, he has a book called The Lies We Tell Ourselves. So anyone in the audience that's interested, because this is a lovely way of putting it, that
Yeah.
we tell ourselves stories about ourselves. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So uh, also in my graduate training, it was sort of very psychoanalytic, and there is within the psychoanalytic world a lot of interest in the mind-body connection, going all the way back to Freud, right? So between my sort of psychodynamic training in my graduate program, my ISTDP training, all my supervision and immersions and all of that, I was learning a lot, and I was also getting lucky to get referred people in the various clinics I was working in graduate school who were having medically unexplained physical symptoms of various kinds, and getting to work with them and trying to learn. And so yeah, so that's really the short version. It sort of just continued from there, that, because I had developed that interest while I was in graduate school, those were the kinds of referrals I would try to solicit. I would try to form partnerships with different physicians in the Washington area, and now I'm trying to build that up here in the Philadelphia area, to get referrals of people who we're tending to sort of bounce from specialist to specialist, not seeing good results, not getting definitive diagnoses, having various psychiatric comorbidity, just to see if I could help, just to see if with my knowledge and skill set, that we could explain these medically unexplained symptoms, with a sort of psychological explanation. And so that's been great. It's been a wonderful part of my career, and it's also nice to see that there's kind of a large community around it now, and that you've and your podcast has been so wonderful in bringing together so many voices, and so many highly productive voices within this community. People who are writing and teaching and researching. I'm just a little solo practitioner here, all alone in my office. So I'm grateful for the people who are doing the research and
that's true. Yeah.
The marketing, spreading the knowledge. Yeah.
Would you now sort of like there's people are recommended to do mindfulness, to do reflective writing, to do breathing. Now all of these things, they're dished out to them, and they're all good things, and it's what we want. And in a way, in that ISTDP, sorry, I'm getting dyslexic this morning. ISTDP background.
It's a hard one. It's a hard one,
isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've just got up, remember, as well.
That's right. Yeah. Good morning.
Yes. Anyway, they're the goals in the end, but it's the journey to those goals. And that's why the way Dr. Joseph wrote it down, or in his blogs, and I actually put one of his blogs below the invitation as well for anyone who is interested in reading it, is through working out why we're anxious, undoing the anxiety, looking at the defenses. Would you explore that a little bit now, so that the barriers become the doors to
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, it's funny, of all the blog posts of mine from the years that I was writing for goodtherapy.org, this is my least favorite, one that I'm least proud of, because I don't really fully stand by it anymore. So folks who are watching, go ahead and read it. Tell me what you think, openly critique it. And I do hope you get something out of it. And I also encourage you to read the other ones, because honestly, there's other ones that I like a lot better. I'll tell you, maybe I'll tell you sort of what my issue is with it, with 2020 hindsight. And I guess, what was it, written like 2017? Do you have it in front of you? To 20?
I don't know. I didn't put it up because I didn't want it. I wanted this conversation to be present moment conversation. So I put up another blog of yours, so that people would get a gist of what you're talking about, not so much about that, because one person will read Sarno's book and get better. Another person might need to spend a year or something with a therapist.
That's right.
Yeah. So we're all different, and we know as clinicians that often it's coming from early childhood trauma and things like that, and depending when the rupture has happened in their feeling of safety. So I wanted it to be just like ISTDP is, in the present moment, as you speak. Good. Yes.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So in the present moment with 2020 hindsight, right? In the blog, I'm saying that anxiety and defenses, psychological defense mechanisms, like for instance, self-distraction, is one of the ones I write about there. I'm saying that I refer to those as barriers to mindfulness, right? As though they are psychological states that are standing in the way of something. And the way I put it in the blog is that this anxiety and these defenses are standing in the way of our experience of and mindful awareness of emotions, right? And I think that in doing so, I set up an implicit hierarchy. I set up this hierarchy that feelings and mindfulness of feelings is better and more important than mindfulness of anxiety and mindfulness of what I was calling their defense mechanisms or avoidance mechanisms. I no longer stand by that necessarily, and I can talk about why. And I think what I would say now is that, what I would be shooting for in life as an ideal is just mindful awareness of what we are, who we are, all that we are, whatever we are in this moment.
Yeah.
And the learning experience and the difficult, painstaking experience of learning to be with what is in this moment is, to me, is it a goal? Is it's to me, it's what mindfulness is about. Okay. And there, rather than saying being with what is, being with who you are is what mindfulness is about, I'm saying being with your emotions is what mindfulness is really about. And that's what I object to, is this sort of prizing of emotions, placing them hierarchically higher than other psychological states. The reason I no longer agree with that is because I could give a couple of reasons. One is, it's not really so easy for all of us to just be present with and aware of and sort of set with our emotions, right? That's for many of us, that is can be a lifelong work in progress, or a very long-term work in progress, to just be with what we are, be with our feelings. And so when we set, as therapists or as teachers or whatever, when we set, when we tend to prize experience of emotions over other experiences, there's some people that will not be helped by that, because we're basically setting an impossible goal for them. We're setting a goal for them that is just not going to be possible right now. We're holding up a stick that is just too high for them to jump to right now. And some people will get depressed in response to that. They'll say, oh, well, Dr. Maury in his blog post said emotions are the real point of mindfulness, the real goal of mindfulness, and all I can do is these defenses, or all I get, oh, it's just another thing I'm failing at. It's another thing I stink at, right? Which is only going to increase symptoms. It's only going to negatively impact their self-esteem. And I don't know. Don't let me ramble too long. Is this something?
No, you're fine. What I'd like to ask you, you said when we want to have a hierarchy of emotions, what's in between the emotions? What are we looking for? What are we really looking for when a patient comes to us and sits in front of us?
That's right.
What are we looking for?
Well, that's a great question. At this point, well, one of the interesting things that comes out in therapy, right, is often that we learn from the person in therapy. We learn about the hidden hierarchies that they have in their life. They have this vision of this good version of me that's good, that I like, and this bad me that sucks, that I want to get rid of in this therapy. Can we get rid of this me in this therapy, and only keep this me? I only want to feel these feelings, but not these other feelings.
Okay, now let's stay with that for a moment.
Yeah. We learn about
these feelings. What would we say to our audience about these feelings? What would they be? Would they be something to do with love? Would they be the feelings that they're trying to reach? That hierarchy is about care, isn't it?
Well, maybe I was not clear. That's not how I was thinking of it. To me, actually, the sort of hierarchies that we impose upon ourselves.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
This vision of a good me and a bad me, a right me and a wrong me. I find that those can be kind of harmful to the person.
Of course.
And often come, not so much from a loving place, or not so much manifestations of love, but manifestations of self-judgment, sort of imposing value systems upon ourselves that are not necessarily realistic for us, that was an early trauma for many of us, is having a value system imposed upon us that was inappropriate to our nature. And then as adults, we wind up doing that to ourselves and making ourselves sick from that. So for me, where is the love in all of that? You could say probably when we impose unfair value systems on ourselves, when we siphon ourselves through this through these hierarchies and judgments. In some ways, you could think about, well, maybe that was in childhood my definition of love. My definition of love was seeing myself as only good sometimes and bad other times, seeing myself, and so as adults, it can be the case that we are trying to love ourselves, and for better or worse, the ways we wind up loving ourselves is the ways we were taught to love. And if we were taught to love in ways that involve superimposing unfair value systems on ourselves and reducing ourselves to good me, bad me type hierarchies, then that's how self-love will come out for us at periods of time in our life. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Well, to me, it makes sense, because also when those values of love are misaligned, or whatever you want to call it, that would be a reason why the body would be tense or disrupted, wouldn't it? Or smooth muscle anxiety.
Sure.
All of that would come up. So these are the symptoms that we see when people try to live a life of love in that distorted manner, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Well, we're loving ourselves the best way we know how.
That's right.
But that love can tend to involve tremendous pressure to be something that we're not, to like things we don't like, to feel things that we don't feel, to not feel the things that we do feel,
to pretend. In other words,
and to whatever extent we are taking that pressure onto ourselves, that will make us sick without question.
Yes, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Because when patients come and they say that they've got, say, constant headaches, for example, which we would sort of see as a symptom of maybe a relationship problem. Well, they don't see it as a symptom of a relationship problem. They see it as a symptom of a headache. But in actual fact, they've had to have a false self come up to keep the relationship operating, haven't they? So it's going to give you a headache, so to speak.
Right.
Would you? Yeah.
It can go that way. Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that sort of false self, to be in agreement with someone, will give you a headache, won't it? Or stomach pain.
It absolutely can.
Yeah.
It absolutely can. And yeah. And the other problem is, it's like we're calling it false. We're making this dichotomy: false self, true self.
Yeah.
And sure, in childhood, we had to embrace a false idea of ourselves, a false conception of ourselves, in order to please somebody, in order to be accepted, in order to maintain an attachment. But at a certain point in life, it becomes who we are in this moment. This sort of mean, judgmental me that's imposing all these nasty, unfair values on myself. Unfortunately, in that moment, that's not false. That's really me doing that, and it has very real, profound physical health consequences.
It does, doesn't it? Yes,
yeah. Certainly.
Yeah, and then drops the self-esteem, doesn't it? Yes. So
big time.
It's sort of like an implosion, isn't it?
It really can be. It really can be.
And then, of course, there's this lack of interaction with other people, and it becomes an OCD type thing, doesn't it? That, if I go out and I don't know where all the toilets are in the town, I won't be able to go out because my stomach will be so upset. And so stay at home, stay quiet, don't do anything.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't go out to that luncheon or whatever with people, because during that time, I'll get a headache. So it closes down the life of the person, doesn't it?
It does.
Can
It
you
does.
sort
It
of
really can.
draw that out a little bit more so that they can see that when they're asked then by a coach or a therapist to do writing or mindfulness and that, they've already closed themselves up and they're not able to actually reach out. And that's why I like the way you wrote that article, because it actually, your movement might have been to expand it more, which we want in our lives, but it also reminds us that we've shut ourselves down and that we can't reach out. And as you called it, the barrier becomes the door. That was all. Yeah.
So yeah, you're wanting me to speak about sort of how people can sort of have, sort of, you could say, like phobic responses to
Yeah,
to physical
yeah.
symptoms,
Yeah.
and to sort of cut off different areas of their life where symptoms might emerge.
Yeah, for safety's sake. I mean, it's done for safety's sake, isn't it?
Right. Well, yeah, at
Yeah.
least to create a feeling of safety, right?
Yes, but it
At the
doesn't.
end of the day, you're not safe because you're home with yourself and your mind.
Exactly. Yes.
It's the very
And
mind that's churning out the symptoms, and it kind of doesn't matter where you are. Many of us soon find that it doesn't matter where you are.
the ruminating and the catastrophizing
Yeah,
stays.
our minds find us, but yes, certainly to create a sense of safety, and to and I think there's something in there about an understandable, though impossible, wish for control over the symptoms, right? Um, at one level, right, symptoms are non-consciously generated, right? So we have, what else is non-consciously generated? Dreams, right? And so you have about as little control over how your dreams are created. You have as little control over your symptoms as you do your dreams, which is none, right? They just
That's
kind of emerge spontaneously. But out of naturally, we want control over that which we don't control. And it's nice when we can get it. But sometimes what we wind up doing is we're trying to establish what turns out to be a false sense of control, by, for instance, avoiding certain foods, avoiding certain exercises, avoiding certain places, avoiding certain people, with the thought, well, last time I ate a strawberry, I had a stomach ache, so I just have to cut out strawberries. Last time I I don't know how many. I don't know if I need to go on with too many examples.
Well, they're good.
But
It's good to do that, because that's one of the issues, isn't it? When a person comes, how could that hip pain be not related to the fact that I walked for 5 kilometers yesterday? Yeah, but
sure.
the hip pain is more likely to be about who was walking with me or who wasn't walking with me, not the fact
Well,
that I walked 5 kilometers, maybe.
yeah. I mean, some people have such badly degenerated hips
Sure,
that.
I'm using that as an example. That's all.
Right, right. Sure. So,
Yeah.
we don't want to fully rule out medical causation
No.
for some people, but
Yeah, but today you don't have you can walk 5 kilometers and have no leg pain, but tomorrow
right,
you walk
right,
5 kilometers and you've got leg pain and you need to go back to the physiotherapist, etc.,
right.
etc.
Or for instance, you've been invited to go on a walk with someone who's emotionally triggering to you in some way, or troubles you in some way, and all of a sudden the morning before the walk,
Yeah,
leg pain, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but when someone comes, that it's very difficult for them to make that connection, and isn't it? Yeah,
Oh, of
yeah,
course, of
yeah.
course. Yeah, I mean,
Because all they
it's
can see is the pain. They can't see
yeah,
beyond the pain. Yeah,
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 yeah, and it's they all they can see is the pain. They can't see beyond the pain, and we also have to remember. Uh, what's a good way to think about this? For many people, they're the ways their body has become the only place where it's safe to express emotions, or the only way they can have been able to safely express emotions or feelings or memories or anything is through their body. So not only is it hard to see through the pain, but it's hard to completely shift your mode of thinking about what your body is doing. It's hard to look at your life and say, oh my God, all these years, um, uh, my body has sort of been the voice of my emotions rather than my mouth and the thoughts I was sharing. So there, I think for a lot of people, there's a great deal of pain just that would come just with recognizing, and emotional pain, grief, sorrow, a sense of loss that comes with that moment of realizing that some aspect of their pain was psychogenic, um, because it really puts, I think it can put one's life in perspective. It helps a person see, like, oh my God, in my upbringing, it was so unsafe to feel that my body had to start to do the talking. It was so impossible to get attention for my emotions, but I did see that I could get attention for my physical symptoms. So everything got channeled that way.
Yeah.
And that would be a very painful realization that, we're not motivated to seek out pain, right? Human beings, we don't go chasing after pain. We don't like pain, emotional pain. And so many people uh, don't look down this road of, okay, my physical pain has a possible emotional explanation, because of all the emotional pain that would come with that shift in mindset, and the new perspective they would have on their life. Does that make sense? Was that clear
Yeah.
enough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's lovely. I just checked because we've got no one talking in the sideline, and I just checked and I thought, well, maybe I didn't do this correctly, because Tova's the best expert in our IT world. No,
Okay.
no. So it is all being broadcast. Yes.
Okay.
Where would we like to go to from here? The pain is constant. The pain is keeping us away from ourselves. Could you draw that out a little bit more? How the pain keeps away from those emotions. And you also spoke about a hierarchy, and that the hierarchy was of finding our emotions. But what else is there in the hierarchy? Okay, Patty's just commented. Thank you. Fear of pain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what's your question about the hierarchy? Say that again.
You said that, in Istdp, the hierarchy is about
Yeah.
reaching emotions. But what else is there in between for patients? Because you
Well,
said emotions, it could be a lifelong thing.
right.
And as we said, people could be in therapy for 12 months and, needing that sort of help to get there. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, what else is there within the hierarchy in your mind that we
Mm-hmm.
could allow people to see that, finding themselves,
Yeah.
finding a relationship with their children,
Yeah, I
maybe,
lost
or
the sound for 1 second. Hang on.
oh, okay,
My earphones came unplugged, but I think I think I could roll with what you're saying here. I think if anything, I'm interested in kind of abolishing hierarchy. Okay.
sure,
Um,
that's where I'm wanting you to.
exactly.
Yeah,
There's a psychoanalyst, Michael Eigen, and I came across just one sentence he said in a passage. I don't remember what book, but he says this beautiful thing. I think all hierarchy is delusional, right? Because if for me to sit here and say, Rose, for you to feel emotions is better for you than to feel something else, it
that's
implies a
right.
kind of omniscience on myself. It's like as though I can know the final truth about what's right for Rose to feel and what's wrong for Rose to feel. Okay, and so what else is there for people to feel other than the sort of list of feelings that seems to be popular in sort of the mainstream ISTDP world? Well, I think for a lot of people, it becomes very important for them to be present with and mindful of and sort of, quote, feeling their resistance, right? And we were talking about this earlier. I believe there's even process research from Alan Abbas that says, in the same way patients who experience breakthroughs of emotion get symptom relief from Istdp. Patients who experience what's coded as a high rise of resistance also get symptom relief from Istdp. Now, what's a high rise of resistance? A high rise of resistance is coded basically as the patient is aware of, experiencing, in touch with, face-to-face with, and verbalizing their resistance. They're talking about their hatred of their feelings. They're talking about how they don't want to feel. I'll be damned before I let these tears go through. Don't ask me another question about my feelings, right? And that when we in our therapy reach that level of awareness of our resistance, that actually leads to symptom improvement.
That's the healing.
Right. So breakthrough, feeling feelings, great. Congratulations. I'm sure that's important too, right? But so is really being in touch with our personality, our resistance, our hatred, our wish to push things away, our disgust, our dislike. And I worry that if we privilege or prize the experience of emotions over all these other experiences, that tempts people to sort of try to bypass what they might really be feeling in a given moment. They see, oh, my therapist really thinks it's important for me to feel anger, or my therapist thinks it's really important for me to feel this sadness. So I'm gonna, I know what to do. I know about pleasing people interpersonally and doing the right thing socially in an interaction, and people will submit or surrender or subvert what they're really feeling, which might be, I hate these feelings. Leave me alone, Maury. I don't want to talk about my feelings. Stop asking about my feelings. They might subvert that aspect of themselves, sort of go along with what they perceive the therapist as prizing or thinking is important. And that can lead to maybe people get some benefit from that, but then people, but there's other problems that then won't get helped in therapy. For instance, like tendency to be pleasing and submissive, right?
Compliance,
Right. So here's a scenario, right? Okay, I'm working with a therapist. The therapist seems to think it's really important that I feel my feelings. I have a little bit of compliance and submissiveness and pleasingness in my character, right? So I bypass some of my own disagreements with what they're saying, and I try to get some feelings out, whatever I can. They seem happy, they seem pleased, and maybe I do get some symptom relief from that. But guess what's not getting worked through at all? My tendency to be pleasing and submissive.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is then I go to my job as a nurse, right? And I overwork. I rather than delegating to other people on the staff, rather than setting realistic limits with patients and their families, I overwork. I start to get tired. I start to get depressed. I'm doing the same thing at home with my family. I'm overworked. I start to get tired. I start to get depressed. I start to get back pain, right? I start to, and as a result, I start missing work. And now I hate myself because I'm not living up to my ideals of pleasing everybody, right? So you can see how important it is that one way to think about it is how important it is as therapists that we try to approach our work without this implicit hierarchy that some patient responses are better than others, some ways of feeling, some ways of being mindful are better than others, because we can wind up setting standards for our patients that then they'll feel a need to live up to. And like I said before, sometimes they'll fall short of that and get depressed. They'll say, I can't do it. I suck. I stink. Maury wants me to do X, Y, Z, and I can't. Or they'll try to do what I want them to do. They'll go on being pleasing and submissive. But again, that just reinforces the pleasing, submissive tendencies in their character. And then the other thing you sometimes see when you're coming to your patients with this implicit hierarchy of some responses that are more valued and valuable than others is you'll see patients become, quote, more resistant, right? They what therapists will call defiant, right? Sort of fighting the therapist, fighting the therapy. But really then, you you can't say the patient is fighting the therapy. They're sort of fighting your value system, which you're imposing on them, right? And so again, everything I'm describing is like the ways that for us as therapists coming into the therapy relationship with this tendency to overvalue mindful awareness and experience of emotions over all other experiences can lead to real problems in the treatment that have very realistic consequences for the person's outcomes, and that can really hurt the therapy. I hope that was clear enough. It was a bit of a ramble, but
well, in a way, we're actually sort of moving over to a more global talk. But in a way, we need to sort of draw it back and actually go to the fact that the patient becomes involved in the therapy session, and that's a repeat of their daily lives as well, isn't it? When they agree with the therapist,
sure.
or look to try and produce that angry response or that tearful response. But in actual fact, they're doing it every day of the week, as you said. They're doing it all over the place. And that understanding, when that clicks in for them, then they've got that understanding then of what's going on. And
That's right.
if you think about, actually, in saying that, Patty also commented on the fact that pain is an illusion. Now, you referred to that before in so much as talking about the hierarchy. I'm not quite sure who you quoted, a psychoanalyst, before.
I said hierarchy is a delusion.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't think I said. Did I say pain
No,
is an illusion?
you didn't. No.
Yeah,
But
hierarchy is a.
but
Yeah.
Patty also said that pain is an illusion, which, is right, isn't it? Because all of our lives can be an illusion, can't it? The illusion is that if I repress my feelings and make my mother happy, well, my life will be happy. That's an illusion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, it's a pleasing illusion. Oh goodness.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
whatever.
ways in which it is true, though, right? There's way for the child at least. It's
Yeah.
there's truth to it. Like if I hide certain feelings, I may get a better response out of my parent.
That's right.
And that's a matter of survival,
Sure.
for a young child. So it's not a total illusion. I guess it's an illusion. What's the illusion? I think you're right that there's an illusory aspect to that. I'm trying to put my finger on it. The illusion is then maybe saying that this is a sustainable strategy. The illusion is
That's true. Yeah.
it's an illusion to say this thing where I hide myself. This is love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's and it's also an illusion. You're also right in the idea that the version of ourselves that we then present to the world is a bit of an illusion, right? This version of me that never feels any anger or that really lives to please you. That's an illusion. That's not a whole me. That's just a nice picture I've curated with the hope of achieving a particular result.
Okay. Actually, Patty has just told us that she heard that from Mosley, that he said that pain is an illusion. Well,
Yeah. If I stub my toe, I'm going to disagree with Mosley Pain Guy. It feels
me too.
non-illusory to me.
Exactly. Yeah. And even the emotional pain isn't an illusion as such.
Right.
Yeah. But the relationship.
So I'm sure there's a specific meaning to what Mosley is saying that I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And Cheryl's comment, unfortunately, because I haven't got Tova here, I can't transfer these comments over onto the main screen. Aren't we great actors until we realize everyone is, until we wake up that we are not living our own life? Okay, so thanks, Cheryl, for that comment.
Sure thing. Yeah. I mean, it's that's a tough thing. We get born into a family. We get born to parents. We're not just cast onto the earth solo and get to do the whole thing ourselves exactly how we would want it done. And for the purpose of survival, every one of us gets cast into a particular role in a family that may not have been our native truth. It's to the point where you can't even claim that there's such a thing as the native truth of the person, because you would never really find out, because what you find out is sort of the expectations and feelings and transferences that are put onto you at the moment of your birth.
That's right.
And
well, actually, could I say
yeah,
it's at the moment of your conception?
yeah, beautiful, true,
Because
yes,
all of this stuff that we're living now as adults has been in utero.
yeah, yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
The
And you're
relationship with our partner, the lack of relationship, it's all goes down. And there is a lovely doctor that I hopefully will manage to persuade to come on board, and he's a perinatal psychiatrist. And
wow,
yes,
cool.
because yeah, because we're set up in utero for how we're
Mhm.
going to, and then that awareness, that opening up, you know, of our insight, then allows us to critique it, doesn't it? And I
Mhm.
mean, that's what therapy does, isn't it? It allows that awareness to come to us. How did you describe it before? Um, I can't remember now. You sort of said when the in therapy you begin to see that your defenses are there to protect you. You didn't say it like that, but that's the protective
Mhm.
mechanism of a defense of
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that um, um, what do you
yeah. I
call
mean,
it?
to use to
Catastrophizing
use to use
or
Cheryl's language,
compliance.
we wake up and find we're not living our own life, right?
That's
We're
right.
living into, we're living a sort of the life that our conditioning has granted us.
True.
And
Exactly.
we also come to realize, oh wow, this is my only life. This is the only one I got. So it's not exactly what I asked for. If I had been given a list, a menu of options of all the ways I could be, all the ways my mind could function prior to birth, I would not have chosen this, and I'm stuck with it. And so I got to figure out what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah.
It's,
It's a puzzle, isn't it? Yeah.
so we're not living our own life, and we're living our own life, and it's our only life. It's really now we're in the realm of like existential
That's right.
psychology, and I really appreciate Cheryl's comment. I mean, and that really is that is, I think, something that hopefully you get in any good therapy, is a sense that um, I'm not living my own life, and I'm stuck with, I'm me. This is the life I get, and that I've just got to do my best with.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I'm always sort of like aware of, I suppose, is that onion sort of experience that, like anger, sadness,
Mhm.
grief. But in the middle is that lovely red blob, which says love, heart, care. And the fact that that self-care um, is being blocked, I suppose, by all the defense mechanisms that we use. And one of those, unfortunately, is somatic pain, isn't it, in a way? It creates self-care in as much as we
Mhm.
have to isolate ourselves to take care of our symptom,
Mhm.
but it
Mhm.
actually it works against us. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Right.
It works against us.
It's really complicated, right? Because
Yeah.
for the child, it's also a gambit for care, like crying, stubbing my stub. I'm a little boy. I stub my toe. I skin my knee. I cry. That is implicitly, at least like from an attachment perspective, an attachment point of view, it's a gambit for love. It's a gambit for care. It's a gambit for tenderness and compassion. We don't always get that, right? Um, or maybe we. I think there's some families where the only time we get the tenderness and compassion, or the only time we're guaranteed to get the tenderness and
When
compassion,
we're
is if we're
hurt.
sick, is if we're ill, or the only time we're guaranteed to get the tenderness and compassion is when we go visit our primary care doctor, who has a good physicianly, manner, right? And so, it's not like as a child we're sitting there saying, okay, well, if I'm sick, I get love. If I go to the doctor, I get love. We don't think that to ourselves, but our psyche kind of learns that because I think basically because of reinforcement. And I do think the search for love, the search for tenderness, can have a major factor in creating medically unexplained physical symptoms. I also think the creation of medically unexplained physical symptoms can be an act of love, or a search for love, in the sense of the mind identifies, okay, I have parents who cannot tolerate sadness. They cannot, how about this? They cannot tolerate my anxiety, but they will listen if I have a stomach ache.
Yes.
Right? So there's a search for tenderness there. There's a gambit for tenderness there. And so in many ways, like all psychological symptoms, and our physical symptoms can represent our best efforts to get love, our best efforts to get needed attention and tenderness.
Exactly. So
In
why would you?
childhood. Yeah.
Okay. So then, why would you want to give it up?
Amen. That's why we're not so quick to part with any of our symptoms.
That's right.
We're not all running to therapy, and especially those of us who really get a lot of our tenderness from physician relationships. We're not running to the psychotherapist who claims that they're going to cure your medically unexplained physical symptoms, because that would end
a relationship, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And a very, very important one.
Create more grief then. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So why would you give it up?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a sad statement, because it's like, God, for all of us who are in that position, we wish that they could get their tenderness and their attachment supplies in a more direct way, in a more overt way, more explicit way. But the world is just, full of us, full of us who are not. We just didn't win the family lottery, or however you want to think about it, such that we've had to get creative in our ways of getting love and attention and tenderness. And
do you think that there's a way of forgiving ourselves for needing that? I'm not quite sure if that's the right way of putting it, but when we remain attached to our stomach ache, for example, what else are we going to do?
Right.
Yeah. So is there a way of actually forgiving ourselves for needing that? I don't know.
My experience is that we all have a tremendous amount of difficulty forgiving ourselves for that. Whether it's true or not, it's a case by case basis. I'm sure it's possible, right? But we all, because that's what we learned, right? It's like we had parents maybe who couldn't forgive us for our needs, for our anxiety, for our defiance, for our need to individuate, for our need for tenderness. They couldn't forgive us for that, and so naturally, it's going to be hard for us to forgive ourselves, our humanity. And I really would be tempted to say that even if we can at times forgive ourselves for our humanity, that's for many of us never going to be a permanent state. We may have moments where we can accept, I was just a kid. It's not my fault that I was born into this family when they were going through this time of crisis and they needed me to be a certain way, and so I turned out a certain way. I can forgive myself for that. But I think many of us will vacillate back and forth between some capacity for self-forgiveness and some looking at ourselves like, I wish you had never done that. I wish you had never been like that. And that's so it can be we got to be realistic with ourselves, and sure, forgiveness is a good thing to aspire to, but it's also going to be hard won given our history,
Now, in the not ISTDP, but in the TMS circles, it's called self-compassion. And again, people can't reach it, and then they become frustrated. You talked about therapy before, about being frustrated, but in actual fact, all the modalities, or whatever you want to call them, that are presented, like writing, expressive writing, if there's a block to it, well, then it's another reason to hurt yourself, to criticize yourself. And the same with mindfulness. If I can't do the breathing, I'm going to criticize myself. I won't titrate it and just step on it and see if I can manage it for a few minutes. I'll just shut it down and give myself another reason to criticize myself instead of just tentatively moving in that direction. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, expressive writing, not so much looking at my bad parents, but my reaction to my life. And as you said before, my desire to individuate. My parents became really anxious when I wanted to go out with or play with my friends down the road who, had head lice or something. I'm making this up just to make the picture stronger. Yeah. So if they could do expressive writing, talking about what was going on inside them, about their resentment to their parents for their overprotectiveness, well, then they could step in there into that space. Or the mindfulness, when I'm doing something, I'm mindful in that moment of what I'm actually physically doing. I don't have to prove to anyone else that I'm doing this mindfulness thing. I'm just being aware in the present moment, as we are right now, as we speak, being mindful of what we're trying to tell people about their symptoms, isn't it? Now, someone has written us a big, long letter here.
Yeah.
Oh, Cheryl has. Oh, Cheryl, I can't read all this out, I don't think. But please, everyone read it themselves because it looks very good. Okay, yeah. Thank you for your comment, Cheryl.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other questions of Maury while we've got him?
And I did want to respond to what you were saying about self-compassion and barriers to these different activities that get prescribed in different therapy modalities. Sometimes where we wind up having to start is compassion for this me who can't have compassion.
Yes.
Compassion for this guy who's so traumatized, so defended, so full of self-hatred that I can't muster any self-compassion. Self-compassion for the fact that I just can't journal. I'm just I get too anxious. I just can't sit down and journal. Can I accept that? Can I be present with that fact about myself?
That's called mindfulness,
That's right. That's right. And it's also called experience, right? And I'm a big fan of this psychoanalyst called Wilfred Bion. Okay.
Yes.
And he was a big advocate of learning through experience.
That's right. And he's difficult to read.
He's horribly difficult to read. Yeah.
Yes. I've got his book on my shelf, but it hasn't. It's only, I think I've probably only read 20 pages of it. There you are. Oh, you've read yours well.
You could be like me, join a Beyond reading group, and that's how you get through some of this hard stuff. I'm in a reading group. But anyway, so he really valued learning from experience over learning from what you're told, right? Learning from what you've gone through rather than learning from what an authority is telling you. And Istdp is a part of this world that I think you've talked about on here called experiential dynamic therapy, right? And to me, the essence of experiential dynamic therapy is learning through experience. And to learn from experience, you have to go through your experience. You have to be with what is. You have to be who you are in this moment. And so a lot of times when we give a patient homework, right, to journal or to do affirmations or whatever it is, we're setting a standard for them that they might not be able to rise up to at a given moment. And so in order to be therapeutic there, in order to be helpful, we really have to say, okay, so can we be with that fact? Can we learn from that fact? The fact that you can't journal right now. What does that mean? Let's think about what does that mean for you? What does that tell us about your life? What does that tell us about your mind? What does that tell us about what you've been through and who you are right now? And can we accept that, yeah, you had this idea of this thing you just wanted to do, and right now you just can't? Yeah, can we just be with that, right?
Aisha has just written that down right now.
What's that?
Aisha, on the expressive writing led me to a worse situation. Like
Yes.
I'm so exposed to my own wounds without being able to heal them.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That can happen, right? And that's another problem with sort of the widespread prescribing of certain interventions, because maybe there's a percentage of people who would sit down and do expressive writing and would not feel they're in a worse situation after. Maybe they'd feel either neutral or even better, but there's going to be a percentage of people who will feel worse afterwards for a variety of reasons. And so we're in like kind of difficult territory as clinicians when we're writing books or speaking on a podcast and trying to give advice that will help a large percentage of people, because maybe journaling, expressive writing will help some people, but some people will wind up feeling like Aisha, and so that's, and so I would just say to Aisha, unfortunately, these kind of interventions are just not one size fits all. And clearly this one is not working for you. And I hope that you do find one that does work for you, and that you can find someone to work with who can help you find an approach to your healing that is tailored to you and to maybe your unique sensitivities that make expressive writing not work for you. I think that,
But Maury, the way you say it is accepting that, for example, expressive writing, mindfulness. Okay, I've got a barrier to it. I'm not coping with it, and having empathy for yourself in that regard is your first. And if you think about these podcasts or whatever that we're doing, it's about people finding their journey, finding that door, that was a barrier, but it's actually, we can take down the barrier, open the door, and just step by step realizing, yes, I am a safe person, something like that. And I can dip my toe in for Aisha. Well, expressive writing didn't speak to you, but you tried it, and you've done it, and that's something that you've achieved, that you've done. It didn't work for you, but you tried it. And I mean, the thing about us as children, we try all sorts of ideas and techniques and things and play around with things. I mean, even think of Lego for little kids, that they'll make a Lego thing and they'll be so proud of themselves, but they can't make that car or that boat, and they'll smash the Lego rather than buy a Lego that's, already tailored for them. So I know it's a pretty vague connection, but I had to think of something on the run that would sort of, how do I put it, build some sort of self-confidence in us that we can try these things. If they fail, they fail. And it's just being present to that failure.
Right.
Yeah.
And hoping we can learn from that, or hoping that we can somehow, with help, leverage that into a growth experience. Absolutely.
Well, I often think of Richard Branson, the Virgin guy. I believe he went broke 3 times, but he just kept going until he found his niche. And I think all of us as human beings we're going to have failures, and we're going to have disappointments, and it's just to keep on that journey. We're pilgrims in a way, aren't we? And we're going to have dead ends, and we just turn around and find the next opening. Yeah. So thank you so much for being with us for the hour.
Yeah.
It's gone really quickly, hasn't it? Yes.
It has, yeah.
Yes. Could I just sort of wind up for people watching and listening? We started off about mindfulness, but what we were actually looking at was the fact that we're okay wherever we're at, really. And if we can't achieve mindfulness, or we can't achieve what we were reading in the book, that's fine too.
Yeah, and it's fine if we're not fine with that.
Yeah.
We might be not fine, and that's just what is.
That's it. That's what is.
That's what we wind up having to be present with, and we don't even have to be present with us, but it's a fact that will be present with us until we're ready to be present with it.
That's true. And that's why I like John Frederickson's The Lies We Tell Ourselves.
Yeah, good book.
Yes, because we're always telling ourselves lies until we wake up and see that we're telling ourselves lies.
Yeah.
So, Maury, thank you so much. And
Okay,
have a
yeah.
lovely, lovely evening in Philadelphia. Yes?
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, outside Philadelphia, suburbs of Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Rose. Thank you for inviting me. It was very nice to speak with you, and I hope I'll see you again, and we'll be in touch.
Fantastic. Thanks,
And
Maury.
if people want to reach me, you can do so through my website, mauryjoseph.com.
Yes.
I'm
Or
always
if
happy
I
to
want
talk.
to comment, I'll send any comments on to him. Or if you're on Facebook yourself, you can actually look at it. And
Okay.
also, audience, remember that we've got a YouTube channel, and Maury's interview will be on the YouTube channel. So you'll be able to review any of his comments or any of his ideas. And, I asked him to come on because he has a teaching background and has been teaching other therapists how to be therapists. So he's got a broad spectrum of understanding and knowledge. So thank you, Maury. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. My
Okay.
pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.